So today the Q&A went up for the Gatac Railen. Well, officially it went up on the 23rd of the month. I'm reporting slightly past there if you count my Eastern Standard Time. But for the Gatac Railen, the alien medium cargo vessel, they went through the most upvoted parts of the spectrum Q&A list that were viable questions, and this is a PSA to remind anybody listening to this to remember you are an active member of the community. You choose your own level of involvement. Be sure to put your questions up and be sure to upvote questions that you feel are important to your gameplay, because that's how these questions are chosen. Some of these questions are more valuable than others depending on your playstyle and also your level of keeping up with all the different sources of information. One of the reasons I make these videos is to keep people well informed. So your participation in upvoting these different choices and wording carefully your questions, by having that enhanced level of knowledge, is a huge force multiplier for the community. So do bear that in mind and encourage your org mates to also take part. One way or another, we should all have a say in these Q&As and getting answers out of the devs. So without any more kind of side things, I'll dive right into it. This will be going to be a short video, mainly just devoted to what the facts are in front of us and analysis on what that means to your gameplay in 3.14. So, the current SCU system is based on rectangular dimensions. So how are the new triangular cargo pods of the Railen going to work? Will this new shape affect the physicalized inventory? The answer from the devs was the triangular cargo pods of the Railen are actually fixed to the ship and not cargo containers themselves. They fit standardized cargo items inside. This ship is 320 SCU. That's a significant size. On the back of the vessel, there is a large size of pods. This is how things work for me. When I literally go to record, you can see that my internet is acting up or the website's acting up. Either way. We'll make this work. But there's basically, picture like a ham or a beehive on the back of this. Some of the analogies I've heard thrown around. And each one of those pods is sitting in the back, individually out externalized access cargo through tractor beams and other means has been stored with standardized cargo containers. I appreciate that they took the time to explain, though, that the doors are separate from the actual cargo containers themselves. So they're more of just an extra sheath that protects the material as it moves around the space. The brochure says bespoke triangular cargo pods are made from high-grade materials in a unique shape to ensure freight remains safe. Will the Railen's cargo pods be more durable than those used on the Hull series? And the devs note that the pods themselves are part of the ship. They provide some protection, unlike the Hull series, where the pods themselves are open to the void. However, they offer nowhere near the protection a fully enclosed cargo bay would offer. And that is very true. If you look at the Freelancer series or the Constellation series, the cargo bay, two of many examples, but the cargo bay on such ships is internally located below the armor of the ship in the hull structure of the ship. And there may be some workarounds to that, like blowing its elevator apart or something in the future, but it does offer a significant difference in strength, whereas these containers are externally accessed. So that means if they're, say, a ballistic round is able to penetrate the shields, or the shields are down, being able to blow apart a few of these and then everything is literally emptying out into space can happen. But they do note that there is some additional protection compared to the Hull series, which is a nice touch. But nowhere near what it would be offered in a fully enclosed cargo bay. That is the side effect and trade-off of using a ship with an externalized cargo system. For the record, there is the Nomad is a good example of a ship that offers no protection to its cargo. You literally put it on the back of what the equivalent of like a space pickup truck is on the back of the ship. So it could be far worse even than the Hull series. But that's a far smaller ship, so the scaling is a little different. And the ease of use and loading and unloading. You're talking about a deep space, long haul ship like the Railen compared to a shorter range, more localized delivery system for smaller drop-offs on the Nomad, for example. Okay, will it be possible to use the Railen's cargo pods at any cargo station? And they note, the devs note, as standardized cargo units are contained within the pods, they're treated as normal by cargo stations. And this is something that I think you're going to see time and time again with the designers. They will think of how can we implement these new ships and Golden Pass ships into the overall system. It's a long haul hauler. It can't just long haul into alien space. It has to be able to operate within UEE territory. It has to be standardized, and it will be able to be utilized in all those different stations with very good ease. So next question, do the Railen shields cover the cargo pods? Yes, the shields do cover the cargo pod area. Now, this is an interesting note here. Do remember that different weapon systems are able to penetrate shields or less so penetrate shields depending on their versatility. A certain amount of damage will bypass the shields in some cases, or especially once the shields start getting weaker and weaker. Now this ship has 2 large shield emitters. The shields, that's incredibly powerful. But once that does eventually get stressed enough to start giving, you will have a lot of what I would call bleed. If somebody was like, say, hammering at this thing, maybe they didn't have enough strength to knock the complete ship out or get to all 4 of the thrusters on the arms or something, but they may have enough capabilities to really make this hauler's life a living heck by maybe even just getting a third of the cargo, for example, just by blowing apart a bunch of the pods and then scooping the loot later on once they scare the Railen and its possible escorts off, or before its response fleet can get there to help it from any of its friendly orgs in the area. When is this ship planned to go into production? When we are putting the ship into production, you'll see it on the RSI roadmap. Now, this is a interesting way to phrase this. They have said that this is a concept ship, which means it is not STF, which was the goal for the past over a year, to have straight to flyable STF as much as possible, if not all the time. This was one of the ships that has recently come out as a concept ship, which means it was very early on. Some of these pretty pictures are some of the only things that we have so far, although this has been a ship that has been concepted for quite some time, so they know what they want this ship to be, and that's why we have a lot of good information, like a general number of SCU, the tractor beam tech helping to implement this, the externalized cargo systems, some of the stuff from this new manufacturer Gatac they wanted to bring online, possibly for more ships in the future. Speculation on my part. But this is a good step in that direction. Do note, though, because it's a concept ship, the SCU may change. They may have to reevaluate how the cargo load system works, or even that, hey, this ship is too maneuverable with those awesome thrusters that can actuate in many different directions for a hauler. So we might find ourselves in a situation we're going to nerf that a little bit or move this around, or maybe it's too weak. You know, it's got the thrusters are way out on the edges of wings. We need to evaluate that and maybe change this system. So anything is possible with a concept ship. And that's one thing to note about this type of ship. But I am quite confident that what we're being offered is going to be extremely close, if not the same, as what will eventually go in, aside from minor flight performance tweaks and also some tweaks to how strong the struts are. Like the arms that are holding the flight mounts and the thrusters on, the main thrusters on. So, right into that topic. Could you tell us more about this ship's speed and maneuvering capabilities? X, as the Exian are known for their engines, will the Railen be fast and maneuverable for its size? They responded, for its size and role, the Railen is more agile than expected due to Exian thruster technology and placement along with its transformation abilities. So what you see right now is that it's basically its parking mode. These arms are kind of tucked in and they're kind of floating on these grav technologies, and this is the grav elevator to get the crew on and off the ship safely, and internally also interestingly. But once this ship is active, these two arms unfold, and it's basically like almost an X configuration on the front here with the thrusters sticking out here, 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 and here. And that means that the ship has an incredible amount of ability to turn those main thrusters in multiple different directions at the same time and turn pretty dang good and be able to go into a Vtol capacity, at least as far as we can see. I believe later in this discussion, they mentioned the Vtol abilities of the ship and when and where that's able to be used. But yeah, it will be very maneuverable. I would strongly suspect they might have to tweak it a little bit, and especially if there's more of ships of the Gatac where, hey, we have a combat or a gunship or something else, speculation time. They would want to see that have a little more performance than this hauler would have, even though this hauler has some serious turrets for a hauler. This ship's not a bad ship all around. I love the visibility. The line of sight on these two turrets are just fantastic. And that's nothing to sneeze at. Dual size 4s on both sides. That's not bad. What are shield emitters and what gameplay function will they have versus shield generators? Shield emitters will be an item on all ships where the shield is physically projected from. Typically, but not exclusively, one emitter covers one face of the shield system. Shield generators provide the shield resource to maintain the shield overall. So this ship has two large shield generators. And then the shield emitters are the actual items on the outside of the ship that can be targeted as like a subsystem. Well, just targeted as a module. Let's keep it simple. I don't want to get tied up in the terminology, but if somebody is to shoot that, the emitter will be broken and your shields will be diminished, if not destroyed, on that side of the ship. And that means, once again, with an externally facing cargo bay, the cargo pod system, you will have a lot of problems very quickly because people will start destroying those cargo pods and breaking them off the ship at the very least, if not actually trying to destroy the ship or down the ship completely or steal the ship, whatever. So the most important thing you can do in a ship like this is take advantage of the extra speed and maneuverability that it offers and constantly be turning the ship. If you lost your shield emitters on the right side, we need to favor the left. If you have an issue where you have multiple enemies fighting, let's try to keep one turret pointed at two of the most dangerous enemies that are doing the most damage, that have the highest. Seems like they seem to be penning the shield the most, breaking all these cargo. You need to use your offense and your maneuverability more so than just relying on the shields to just try to act as a pincushion to protect you. That should be your last line of defense, is them having to break through the shields. That's just buying you time, basically. Could you tell us how we will load the ship? How do we physically fill and load the cargo pods? They are loaded like all other cargo pods by maneuvering the cargo into them by hand, tractor beam, or by hiring NPCs to load them for you. And on a ship like this that has a internalized cargo's tractor beam system, a size 2 one no less, which is a reasonable size, you will likely heavily rely on that cargo tractor beam. So you may line up a whole section of pods and say, okay, my first stop on my hauling route is going to be the back left bottom, pods 40 through 60. and put all that stuff right next to each other, so you can knock out with a tractor beam, bam, 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 knock out each one of those. And then, okay, let's take off. We got this signed for, we got it delivered, let's get out of here. And then go to your second spot, and pods 30 through 40 might be your next stop, and then you're able to line that up. Because the tractor beam will have a travel time getting between the different pods and having to be set up and such for those things. I do not see that by hand being a good move, although there is hand tractor beams. And we've learned just as of last week, we learned that there was going to be specialized tools that are more advanced versions of what the multi-tool can offer with its attachments. So there'll probably be a tractor beam that is more powerful than the hand multi-tool variant, attachment variant down the line. But we don't know what that'll look like right now, or if that's going to come, along with all the other tools that they already confirm, like mining and healing and things like that, that will be available that way. Hopefully there will be. So between that and the much more powerful ship-based size to tractor beam, you will be able to move a lot of things. And then finally, cutting into your profit margin would be hiring NPCs to load and, of course, unload this ship for you. I'm just kind of inferring that. Why choose this ship over a Hobie or a Freelancer Max? The Hobie carries more cargo for a lower price, and they'll call Freelancer Max carry rovers. This is an example of one of those questions where I really wish they'd compared these ships effectively to a different ship. I wish the Freelancer Max was not in this question. I wish it was the Connie Taurus. It would save us a lot of trouble. I'm going to have another video later this week talking just specifically about the Taurus in depth, but I would have loved to have been able to get a little more insight into how that's going to shake out in the final right now and bring that to you for, as early as possible, get you the information that you need to make those decisions, especially if you're considering purchasing one of these ships. We never want to have a ship that is clearly superior in all ways in a similar area. So there are lots of pluses and minuses for each of these ships. The Hobie is a dedicated small crew cargo ship, and as such has a much lower capacity for onboard living for its 2 crew and favors cargo over firepower, which is a very fair argument, which the Railen overcomes because it has a bigger firepower and it also has a bigger crew accommodations and mess and everything. The Max has the benefit of being able to carry vehicles, but the Railen has twice the cargo capacity as the upside. Not just that, the Max's vehicle cargo capacity is not very good. The Connie Taurus would be a much better example of like a multi-role where it can carry cargo or a decent-sized vehicle, and maybe even some cargo on top of a vehicle. Whereas once you start slapping a vehicle into the Max, there's not much space left in it if you put a reasonable sized vehicle in there. I'm not talking about tanks here. I'm talking about an Ursa rover, to be clear. It takes up a lot of space. But yes, if you put an ROC in there or something, you might be able to still have some space, but it ain't going to be much. Whereas with Connie Taurus, we got to see how it shakes out as a final, but it's looking like it would be a lot of space compared to a Freelancer Max. The Max is in a unique position where it's able to kind of zip into smaller pads, smaller locations. It's going to have a place. It'll probably it'll highly likely use less fuel than the Railings or the Connie Taurus, for example, or even the Hobie. But it will have a place, but I don't see it as the be-all, end-all for this. And that's, like they pointed out here, is the whole point. They want to have different roles for ships and no clearly superior in all ways in any job loop. In this case being hauling for short range and long range hauling. So, how do I take that word salad and kind of put this together? The Hobie is in a bad spot right now. I don't see them without retooling the Hobie as we get closer and closer to releasing it. I see the Hobie as kind of something that you would want to stepstone away from with a CCU chain to the Hull C or a Railen or a Connie Taurus, not a Freelancer Max. I see the abilities of the Max being useful for people that are getting ready for planetary outposts, especially because they're going to be extremely small scale for a while until we get even bigger ones much further down the line. I also see the Freelancer Max as like a really fun ship to do box missions for that are complex, like 4 box missions or something like that. That ship, when it's not loaded down with a lot of SEU, is very fast for its size. It has huge engines, and it's pretty big for its size. I mean, but it is an interesting ship that can still haul SCU when you really want to. Especially if you're on a budget, the Freelancer Max is a solid choice. I don't like the visibility of the cargo of the cockpit, but it's not bad. It's not a bad ship at all. It's a nice package that it's together. I would not compare in any way the Freelancer Max though to a Railen, but that's just me. Once again, it's whoever upvotes these choices and makes the decision to write these things, and then the folks who upvote them, that's what they choose. It is what it is. I do like that the Freelancer Max has the ability to haul vehicles. I definitely would like to, test that out more with the ROCs, for example. I think that would be a perfect combination right there for the Freelancer Max to kind of haul those ROCs and then eventually haul the goods from the ROCs and work. For example, if you could build a tiny outpost with just a garage and literally shove your ROCs inside the garage, take the Freelancer Max over there, then use the Freelancer Max to haul the goods back to a settlement to sell, or to a space station to sell all the goods that you got out of that ROC. That's a good example of like that symbiotic relationship that a hauler can get from being multi-purpose. And the Connie Taurus is that on steroids because it can handle larger vehicles. And also, let's not forget that the Freelancer Max and the Connie Taurus have internalized cargo, which is a critical difference. They may sacrifice some cargo size, but they don't have all their cargo literally sitting on the outside of the vehicle where anybody could attack or steal or something like that if they manage to get through your decent defenses. I'm not saying the ship is not any good at fighting, but it is a hauler at the end of the day with good maneuverability. Something's got to give. So let's go into this a little further. Can the turrets be slaved to the pilot with blades? And this is something. Please encourage, but have the restraint yourself and encourage your org mates to stop asking this question. Like all turrets, we'll support slaving them to the pilot with the use of blades. However, they'll be locked forward, so relatively limited use. Solo players would be better hiring NPCs to man them for better coverage. And this is also something else to mention, is that a solo player is not really the best choice for a Railen. I would really highly recommend at least one other player be on board that can run back and forth between the 2 turret locations. And when they're not using the turrets, they could be working the tractor beam to help offload things. They could be offering security if you want to work the tractor beam and keep an eye on your cargo from start to finish. They could be keeping an eye on things or doing the negotiation with the NPCs or players, keeping an eye on things, making sure nobody's sneaking on board to steal things or stealing from the pile of stuff you're creating with offloading this from the ship. And also, if something needs to be repaired in engineering while you're flying, you can't do that solo. Now, NPC crews are going to be a thing, as they mentioned here. It is certainly an interesting option, and especially just for manning turrets. Once turrets are able to be well tasked, where you can tell the NPC in an effective manner, target that thing that's attacking us or something at the very least, I could definitely see it. So exciting stuff. I am curious how much NPCs would cut into your bottom line, or a human player that isn't like a best friend that just wants to tag along with you once in a while for runs. It would be interesting. Maybe even do something symbiotic where it's like, hey, I needed a ride anyway to this other system, and you're in my org. Okay, come along with me, and we'll do. Instead of just delivering you there, I'll take 320 SCU of cargo to make some cash on the way, and you'll, obviously work the turrets if we get into trouble, or work engineering if we run into any problems with the equipment. So just some thoughts. Please stop asking about blading the turret. Of course they can blade the turrets. And just another PSA to answer a more advanced question I've heard a few times myself. Not all ships can blade turrets very well. Some can do it far better than others. Some ships with huge computer systems for their size can even make turrets do all sorts of interesting, exciting things, at least on paper. They don't want to commit to saying it, but basically they may even have like AI that can literally shoot the turrets. Not nowhere near as good as an NPC, or definitely nowhere near as good as a human, but it is a possibility in the future, especially on like huge capital ships or something like that at a very basic level, especially for the PDSs. So we'll see. But in general, if you see a manned turret with a decent sized guns on board especially, you're going to have a hard time doing anything but just having them fixed forward and pointed at the target, whatever the pilot sees, if you don't want to put an NPC at the very least in there. Okay, so will it be able to pick up mining cargo pods from Prospector and Mole? This is one of those left field questions I've really appreciated the community taking the chance at, because the devs answered it very, very succinctly. Well, not designed for this. Given the tractor beam and cargo capacity, you'll be able to pick them up and transport them. Other ships are more suited for this role, though. So they're making clear, look, you might have some trouble actually squeezing the ore or the compressed ore, if it's the mole, into the cargo pods, or you might have to do some type of actual pre-sorting, like, removing them from that and putting them in smaller containers, but you can do it. I do like that they took that chance to ask this question. Good job, community, and kind of hold the devs to this one. But it is a fair point to remember that there might be a lot of prep work. That might be a lot more than you realize. Just talking about, well, you really aren't well suited for it. Other ships are much better at this specific kind of role. And I believe that those other ships would have pre-sorting capacity. We also have not seen, hint, hint, anything about a refinery vessel lately. So remember, that's on the horizon. So if you're considering the Railen for picking up goods from your friend who's in a Prospector or an orgmate team that's running a couple different ships, do not buy this just for that. This is a ship that does a bunch of other things, and it would be nice to have on hand in case you need it for that once in a blue moon, or, like I mentioned earlier, the outpost discussion. That might be another option. Although I would prefer a ship that can handle vehicles, like we talked about the Freelancer Max or the Connie Taurus, are excellent choices. But this is a ship that can do a lot of different things, and one of those things can help out with picking up mining goods within the right reasons and with the right type of prep work. Railen has large, well-appointed living quarters. Can we expect it to be a long-range hauler? I think they said that from the beginning. Even in the brochure, it said on the first page. Yes, for its size and capacity, the crew has plenty of onboard facilities to facilitate long-range hauling. What will the tractor beam be used for? Tractor beams on cargo ships are primarily used to aid in the loading and unloading of cargo. As I mentioned before, these questions were answered in the brochure, answered on the page, and also in different places, to be fair. So the devs answered a few of these specific questions and kind of critiqued them, adjusted them, or went more in depth in ISC coverage or into the the advertisement for different types of ships, as we've seen. But please, keep, if it isn't my videos, check out somebody's on these ships before you go into this, and whichever videos have the most good information, go for. I highly encourage. If it happens to be mine, great. If it happens to be somebody else's, please share their content, not mine. Just as long as the community has the information they need to make the good questions, because these type of questions are examples of wasted questions. These two right here. I'm glad that folks got the answers they were hoping for, but it also worries me that they didn't have this information before they went into this Q&A this late in the game. And they were, had to make the decision to purchase the Railen without those basics. And that's something that I'm trying to prevent. What happens to the ship's gravlev, anti-gravity, and fast build consoles/systems when the power goes out? This is something I myself have been asking. Does it all just fall apart like Rayman? It does not fall apart. All the systems return to a default state and become inoperable until power is restored. So on ships that are far less exotic than the Railen, there is usually an elevator, and I think it was the Carrack that they realized to do this. They added ladders everywhere the Carrack's elevator went, and then a prominent YouTuber pointed out that, hey, if the elevator fails in between two floors and the life support also fails, like say a vacuum starts, say a part of the ship is blown apart in like the floor two, and it's between floor one and two, suddenly both floor one and two would suffer the catastrophic failure because of the elevator being stuck between the floors. And all of a sudden, the oxygen would no longer be in either floor because the seal was actually on the elevator itself. So the default state terminology there is very interesting to me. I believe that this means that they have learned from that mistake. And if you look at the Railen's internal animations, I think my videos, these internal animations that were shown for where that elevator goes. So this is the external elevator, but there's also an internal elevator that's like on a 45-degree angle inside of the ship. And there is actually a floor opening that happens. The elevator passes through it up or down through the ship, and then it closes again. I believe that the default state will be at the top or the bottom of that elevator lift system, and then you'll be forced to use the ladder. And most importantly, if there is a catastrophic failure on one part of the ship, ideally the entire ship's floor is not going to be open, sucking all the air out or into the vacuum that the hole was created. So that's something that we've seen as the game has matured and as the developers have learned from different ships. This is something that's working better. And as I understand it, I believe on the Carrack that is either they're working on fixing that or they will fix that. And that is currently not an issue with the way the oxygen system will work. But once room design gets into higher technologies, that will be an issue. So hopefully that'll be fixed, if it already is not, by that point. So is it all designed to carry... Is it at all designed to carry a vehicle, even a ROC or a Ranger? And once again, it is not designed to accommodate a vehicle in a specific area. However, I'm sure players will find creative ways to get them on board, just like other ships. I can tell you right now, the first thing I want to do with the testing for this ship is open up that wonderful docking collar when we're in Atmo and try to take that size 2 tractor beam and literally pull a Ranger up and shove it in there, or a Nox and things like this, into that docking collar opening, and basically just keep it inside the docking collar. I don't think a Dragonfly would fit in there based on the pictures we've seen, but it is a interesting location. It's the docking collar is literally in the middle here. It's not huge, but it's a reasonable size. It's the generic, the correct size docking collar that they've used across the fleets now for these class of ships. So yes and no. I don't know if an ROC is going to get up there, at least officially. And I could definitely see people like pulling some crazy nonsense for a video or for short range, like tractor beaming and then dropping it on top of the ship if it fits, it sits attitude. But I think once ships actually have that properly thought about, that's just going to roll off and fall off. You're really supposed to have a grid, an internalized grid that a vehicle is designed to sit on and lock down on. It looks like a cargo grid. In fact, some of them are cargo grids and also vehicle grids. But they're telling you flat out that it's not really meant for that. If you get lucky and you happen to be able to squeeze a motorcycle on there, great. But it's not really meant to be there. You know, ships with ramps that have vehicle grids, that's really where you want to put those things. So don't get this if you're thinking of just, squeezing vehicles on it and getting creative like that. That's fun, but that's not going to be a day-to-day thing if that's what you're thinking. Can the Railen enter Vtol separately from the landing mode, or are they linked as part of the transformation? In the concept, the engines rotate for Vtol as part of the landing mode, but as we enter production, we'll evaluate whether we can independently rotate the engines for Vtol without transformation and keep enough force to remain maneuverable? This is a very fair question, and this is an example of like this process. It doesn't bring out every question is like an amazing home run, but this is a question that's necessary. Having those thrusters have all this versatility and having a transformer ship that can literally drop into this crazy other design that's better for VTOL and be able to have a lot more thrust up and down would certainly help in some cases of escape enemies that are attacking you, or be able to safely land in a location, but you're setting up for landing. You're not quite ready to land, but you want to just have that extra thrust and the VTOL capacity and literally just tuck these under and have the thrusters just sticking straight up, except for these, at least for these on the bottom of the ship. Very exciting stuff. And I'm glad that they're considering how you would be able to use VTOL as part of a system that is not automatically going into landing mode. There are situations where you may want to utilize this ship, not in landing mode, but in VTOL. The Retaliator, I believe, is one of the ships that can do fun things like that. And or at the very least, I think that that's a ship that would love to have it installed for its drop pods that are coming as one of their modules for the front of the ship. And I can see the Railen doing some interesting things as part of this. Like, for example, if you're in a pretty hot location, and I don't mean hot as in like a tropical climate or as in a super dangerous location, but maybe it's just a little more sketchy than normal, I could certainly see a Railen coming up and having a few pods pre-designated, just like we talked about, say pods, 15 through 20 or something, all this little section, and just saying, hey, crewmate, workmate, we need you to grab the tractor beam. We're going to go into VTOL mode and hover 25 feet off the damn ground. And we're going to keep our shields up, and we're going to drop these things out, and we're going to have the tractor beam push all the materials down to the ground and literally drop all the stuff off, and have a situation where it's like, hey, you already paid us because it's too sketchy here. We really don't trust you wretched pirate folk. We're just paid to drop off the bare essentials, and we're out of here. I could definitely see this ship as having an interesting niche in, maybe the less than safe locations, being able to switch to a VTOL mode if it's stable enough, and be able to just tractor beam. Okay, the pods are dropped. We're out of here. Back into regular mode. Get the heck out of Dodge. That would be a really interesting design. And having your landing system go and all fully set up for landing may not be the best option in that scenario. You need to be able to quickly switch to a flight mode and escape, from VTOL. So I don't know. I think this is an interesting ship. The more we talk about it, the more we learn a bit about it, and we hear from the devs. I am excited about it. This is one of those ships I've CCU'd. I have a CCU 2, and I'm kind of sitting on the fence about. There is some really, really reasonable CCUs off of this ship that if you want to really take a look at, that's kind of the way I'd recommend, even though it's a little higher with the CCU shape than it would be with Warbond, with the new stuff. But I would certainly take a hard look at this ship in that circumstance. Now, with if we take a look at the ship upgrades, this ship is still available for the non-Warbond version. Not an issue. And just a reminder, you have ships that have a lot of versatility by having that just a $5 upgrade sitting on there. You get the Scorpius if you're sitting on one of those, the Ares series if you're sitting on one of these, the Centric Yai, the Ba New Defender, and even the mighty little Terrapin. Heck, even the Corsair is not a big jump. It's 10. in the Vulcan, which is really a starter ship. If you have this still, really you shouldn't have this. It is not a medium repair unless they're reconcepting it yet again. The Vulcan is like a advanced starter. Ship is nowhere near what it claims it is unless they've reconcepted it again. So just some food for thought. All of these are solid options to have a CCU to sit on, and do not apply the CCU. By not applying it, you have a lot of versatility there. If you don't like, God forbid, I know this is heresy, but if you don't like the way the Corsair comes out, bam. If you don't like the Banu Defender, or you're tired of it, you've had your fun, but you find another fighter you much prefer, and the Railen starts coming out the pipeline and it's ready to go, and you need a cash cow. There you go. Same deal with the Areses, which are very soon going to be released. You could even use these. Just like the Banu Defender, you can sit on these and use them, and then have this CCU for $5 just sitting there ready to rock, and then you switch over later on as a later game, as a near term type of thing. This is not something you probably want to sit on completely. It's just something. If you have a $5, I mean, how can you argue with that? It's literally $5. Now, as a reminder, if you do not war bond a CCU and then you put it in a buyback, that is usually a bad idea, because the price could jump up dramatically. If this thing gets closer to releasing and the price goes up between these two items, you will pay the difference. But if you just sit on this, if you're willing to spend that much credit, $5, and just sit on this CCU, you won't have to pay a dime. You literally just have this forever in your back pocket ready to go. So honestly, I would suggest something like this for folks that have that means, or are even close to considering this ship as a serious option. And that's going to do it for this episode. If you felt that this kind of in-depth discussion helped, please let me know in the feedback, both on here in public or in Discord private. I found that the community is kind of split on that way of giving me feedback. Informal feedback is always welcome, and comments are always welcome. I love the discussion that it creates. And once again, do you feel that the Railen is something more exciting for you now? Or is it something where you're kind of starting to see the less shiny side of it and realizing, hey, day to day, the lack of vehicles, the less protected cargo, the possibility that it won't be able to Vtol without being in a deep landing mode, so it's kind of less versatile than I thought it would be. These are things that are serious considerations. But at the same time, its maneuverability, its firepower, its ability to do a lot with a very small crew, and its ability to go long distances is certainly going to give it a lot of value. I think this ship is a great ship for those who are okay with this being externalized cargo, especially non-ore work. So not working alongside and work flowing with a Prospector or a Mole. I would not recommend it for those type of jobs. And for Player Outpost, I think this thing will be more of a delivery truck than a vehicle hauler hybrid cargo vessel. I think just bear that in mind, and as long as you're okay with that limitation, these things will be great ships for that. The maneuverability to be able to squeeze into a tight quarters and be able to deliver things maybe into not the best terrain, both physically and also politically. This will be a great in-game politics, where you might need to drop off to neutral terrain, neutral friends, not so friendly folks, and get cash get the UEC ahead of time. This type of ship will be king of that, I believe, in those specific circumstances. And it will be a fun, good, all-arounder long-haul ship. And it's truly a beautiful, striking vessel to me. I think it's going to be a really good choice for a lot of folks. And at the very least, it's certainly worth a CCU to sit on and give yourself these options. Give yourself the ability to be able to maneuver between all the different class of ship in that category. Once again, please like, comment, and subscribe. It greatly helps the channel. I wanted to thank you all we just broke 100 subscribers just yesterday, and that's really awesome. It means a lot to me. that you guys give me the confidence to keep coming back. And have a good night.